I'll never forget the look on Karen's face as the red and blue lights flickered across her perfectly manicured lawn. There she stood, arms crossed, that smug smile firmly plastered on her face, dramatically gesturing toward our gated driveway. She was convinced this was her moment of victory after weeks of relentless harassment. 2 police officers approached slowly, and I watched from our security camera feed as one of them touched his earpiece, listening intently. His expression shifted, and he turned to Karen with a new look of skepticism. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "dispatch tells us this is a false report. There's no emergency at this address." Karen's jaw dropped. "That's impossible." I heard screaming. "There's something suspicious going on in there," she insisted, her voice rising to that familiar, shrill pitch I had come to dread. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that the 911 dispatcher who took her call was my wife, Elaine. And Elaine had recognized Karen's voice immediately. My wife and I had moved into our dream home just 3 months earlier. It was a beautiful property on the edge of the Oakwood Estates neighborhood, technically outside the homeowners association boundaries but close enough that we shared the same street entrance. The previous owners had made it very clear to us, our property was private and not subject to HOA rules. We had all the documentation to prove it, but that didn't stop Karen Wilkins, the self-appointed HOA president, from making our lives a living nightmare. It all started innocently enough. A knock on the door just 1 week after we moved in. There stood Karen, clipboard in hand, fake smile firmly in place. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said sweetly, though her eyes were already scanning our property for violations. "I just wanted to let you know your mailbox doesn't meet our community standards. You'll need to replace it within 7 days." I remember smiling politely as I explained that our property wasn't part of the HOA. I even offered to show her the documentation, but she waved it off dismissively. "That's a common misconception," she said with a condescending laugh. "All homes in this visual corridor are subject to our aesthetic guidelines. I'll leave you a copy of our rulebook." She thrust a 3-ring blinder into my hands before I could object. Later, I discovered it contained over 100 pages of absurdly specific rules, everything from acceptable shades of beige for exterior paint to the maximum height allowed for garden gnomes. The next week she was back, this time complaining about our landscaping. The week after that, it was our porch lights. Each time, I calmly explained that we weren't part of the HOA. Each time, she grew more agitated. My wife suggested we just ignore her, which worked for about 2 days, before Karen started taping violation notices to our mailbox. Things escalated quickly after that. Karen began taking photos of our house from the street, sometimes spending 10 or 15 minutes meticulously documenting alleged infractions. Once, she even blocked our driveway with her golf cart, the unofficial vehicle of petty tyrants everywhere, while she measured the height of our hedges with a tape measure. When I asked her to move, she launched into a 20-minute lecture about community responsibility. The final straw came when we received a certified letter claiming we owed $750 in HOA fines. That's when I decided enough was enough. I installed a security gate at the end of our driveway. It wasn't especially imposing, just a simple wrought iron design with a keypad entry system and intercom, but it sent a clear message: our property was private. Karen was furious. She left voicemails demanding the gate code for emergency access, citing non-existent community codes about the right of inspection, and threatening legal action. I saved every message, every note, and every piece of documentation of her increasingly erratic behavior. My wife, who works as an emergency dispatcher, suggested we might need a restraining order if Karen's behavior continued. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was working from home when our gate buzzer started ringing non-stop. Watching the security camera, I saw Karen standing there, finger pressed firmly on the button, her face set in a mask of determination. Reluctantly, I answered the intercom. "You need to open this gate immediately," she demanded, cutting straight to the point. "I've received a complaint about your property and need to conduct an inspection." "Karen," I said as calmly as I could, "you know we're not part of the HOA. You have no authority to inspect our property. Please stop harassing us." Her face twisted with anger. "Don't you dare tell me what my authority is. I've been president of this association for 7 years. Open this gate now or there will be consequences." I sighed. "Karen, I'm working. Please leave our property." or I'll have to report you for harassment." "You'll regret this," she hissed before storming back to her golf cart. I thought that would be the end of it for the day. I was wrong. About 20 minutes later, the security system alerted me to movement at the gate. Checking the camera, I saw Karen on her phone, gesturing wildly toward our house. I turned up the volume just in time to hear her say, "Yes, I need police immediately." I heard screaming inside the house, and now they won't open the gate. "I think someone might be hurt." The address is 4287 Oakwood Drive. My blood ran cold. She was calling 911 with a false report. I immediately tried calling my wife at work, but she didn't answer. She was on duty and often couldn't take personal calls. All I could do was wait anxiously as Karen paced in front of our gate, occasionally casting triumphant glares at the camera. What I didn't know then was that Elaine, my wife, had answered Karen's 911 call. Elaine recognized Karen's voice instantly from the many times she'd come to our door. More importantly, she recognized our address and knew there was no emergency. Following protocol, Elaine couldn't simply dismiss the call, but she flagged it as potentially false while dispatching officers for a welfare check rather than an emergency response. She also made a note in the dispatch report that the caller was a known harasser of our residents. Within 10 minutes, a police cruiser pulled up to our gate. Karen immediately rushed over to the officers, pointing dramatically at our house. I decided to meet them at the gate, punching in the code to let myself out while leaving the gate closed behind me. "Officers, I am the homeowner," I said, holding up my ID. "There's no emergency here. This woman has been harassing us for months because we refuse to submit to HOA rules that don't apply to our property." I finished. One of the officers gave a brief nod, then touched his earpiece again, listening intently. His expression shifted. "Sir, is your wife Elaine Miller?" he asked. I nodded, still confused. "She's currently on dispatch and has provided us with some context regarding this situation," he explained. Then he turned to Karen, whose smug expression had begun to fade. "Ma'am, did you call 911 to report screams and a possible emergency at this address?" "Yes." "And they refused to open the gate," Karen said, her voice rising in pitch. "There could be someone hurt in there." The officer's face hardened. "Ma'am, the dispatcher who took your call is this gentleman's wife. She informed us you've been harassing this family over HOA issues, despite their property not being under your jurisdiction. She also confirmed there was no emergency at the time of your call." Karen's face went pale. "That's not true. I heard something. She's clearly just covering for her husband." The second officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, all 911 calls are recorded. We have your exact words. You claimed to hear screaming, but our dispatcher noted you've made similar allegations in the past about other residents who disagreed with you." By now, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered on the street, watching everything unfold. Karen's eyes darted nervously between them and the officers. For once, she was speechless. "Karen Wilkins," the first officer said firmly, "you're being placed under arrest for filing a false police report and misusing emergency services. These are serious charges." As he read her rights, Karen's expression cycled from disbelief to outrage, then finally to fear. "This is absurd. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. You can't arrest me for protecting the neighborhood." But they could. And they did. As the officers gently led her to the patrol car, she looked back at me, venom in her eyes. "This isn't over," she spat. "Actually, Karen," I replied calmly, "I think it is." The crowd remained silent as Karen was placed in the back of the cruiser. One of the neighbors, an older gentleman, slowly approached me. "We've been wanting to say something about her for years," he said quietly. But no one had the courage to stand up to her. After giving my statement to the officers, I went back inside and finally got through to Elaine on her break. She confirmed what I'd already suspected. She had immediately recognized Karen's voice and our address when the call came in. "I couldn't believe she'd go that far," Elaine told me, "but I made sure everything was properly recorded. Her false report is fully documented." Karen's legal troubles turned out to be serious. At her hearing 3 weeks later, she was found guilty of filing a false police report and misusing emergency services. The judge, unimpressed with her antics, was especially stern when we presented documentation of months of harassment. Karen was fined $5,000, sentenced to a year of probation, and ordered to complete 200 hours of community service. The most satisfying part, she was slapped with a restraining order. She couldn't come within 100 feet of our property or contact us in any form. But the cherry on top came from within the HOA itself. An emergency meeting was held, and Karen was unanimously voted out as president. Apparently, we weren't the only ones she bullied. As she was escorted out of the meeting, her face was frozen in disbelief. She simply couldn't fathom that her reign of petty tyranny had finally come to an end.